Spotify editorial playlists will not generate fans. Before I even start, let me just say, the hard truth is hard to swallow. When I started these videos, I told myself I'm gonna be open and transparent. Nothing's off the table. This is as good as it's gonna get. So let's start with the good. The good is I've never paid for any playlist placements ever, and I highly recommend you don't either. And if you have, I'm sorry. And if you're thinking about it, you definitely need to watch this video. Fortunately, I've been on a few Spotify editorial playlists over the years. I've been on Jazztronica, State of Jazz, even featured as the cover artist for All That Jazz. Making it on editorial playlists is not rocket science. Really, it comes down to the one thing that I'm constantly telling you guys, which is to make sure you're frequently releasing music. Obviously, the music has to be good, of course, but if you're frequently putting out music, you will definitely get to a point where editorial playlists will start to pick up your content. But to be honest, is it really that great? Don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, the streams really help. But is it really helping or is it hurting? Well, in my opinion, it's a little bit of both. Let me explain. On one side, editorial playlists are great because you generate a ton of streams. Streams are great because streams equal revenue, albeit very little. The flip side, playlist listeners. Playlist listeners tend to be passive listeners. They're not really listening with intent to find new artists or things like that. They're really just pressing play and going about their business, whether they're cleaning the house, cooking, driving, whatever it is. They're not really looking for new artists. They might like your song if they're paying attention, but for the most part, out of all of the streams that you get, you're probably not going to generate that many actual fans. Added to that, more listeners on Spotify tend to be playlist listeners. If you're one of the few people who are actively seeking out new artists on Spotify, you're listening to albums and things like that, you are a special breed. And 9 times out of 10, if you're watching this video and you know my music, you're probably one of those people. So as someone who's heavily relied on editorial playlists for streams, I'm realizing now it's a big crutch. To date, 48% of my streams are coming from editorial playlists. On one side, you might think that's great, but to me, if I stop getting editorial playlists, that's literally half of my streams gone. That's a lot. I had to seriously think about this. If it wasn't for editorial playlists, 50% of my streams would just disappear. And I've seen it. I had a song come out in September called Envy that got playlisted. To date, it's at about 89k streams. That's wonderful. But a month before that, in August, I put out a record called Antibiotics. Antibiotics did not get playlisted, and therefore, to date, only has 7k streams. That's a huge difference. Fam, this is a textbook definition of a crutch, and I've got to fix it. Now, let's iron this out. Let's see what we can do to get off these crutches. So, first off, the ultimate goal is to find real listeners, to find people that are actually seeking out your music. Not just fans of the playlist, but literally fans of your music. So at the end of the day, it's not really benefiting you or your music career, and you'll start to see your monthly listeners going up and down, not a steady climb up. That's exactly what I'm seeing right now. So for me, I'm trying out one important new thing. Spotify playlists are great. If you get on an editorial, congratulations. It's a great sense of validation. It means that you're definitely going to get a certain amount of streams. So all of that is great, but it's not a long game solution. Even if it's a Spotify playlist that has 500,000 followers. The first question you might be asking is, well, should I create a playlist that has my music on it and other artists? My answer to that, no. Unless you're doing it for fun, that's cool. I mean, if you're doing music for fun, that's also cool. But if you're doing it to actually make some money and to make a career out of this music, then you might want to try something different. Here's why. Number one, you run into kind of the same scenario where you might as well just try to put your music on an editorial playlist because you're sharing the streams with other artists. Therefore, you're not really generating the type of streams that are really going to create the fans that you want. But wait, you might be like, well, dude, that sounds super selfish. You should definitely add other people's music to your playlist, blah, blah, blah. Well, my answer to that is absolutely, it's selfish. But let me say this. Firstly, I think we need to get away from this idea that the word selfish or the idea of being selfish is actually a bad thing. I think when it comes to your career, when it comes to business, you do have to be somewhat selfish. The truth is, each of us needs to focus on building our career so that we can be in a position to help others. So it's not really being selfish, it's just being timely. It's about being focused. And that is what this is all about. Adding other people's songs to your playlist in the eyes of your listeners makes you look more like a curator of music versus a creator of music. I actually tried this a few times. I created a playlist recently called Jazz Shop, which was super fun and it was really fun to make. But when it came down to it, it was a lot of work with very little return. So yeah, I mean, if your goal is to be a music curator, then all power to you. You should do this. You should go this route. And let's be honest, when artists curate playlists and then put a bunch of their own songs into the playlist, you're not really fooling anybody. That is selfish because the ultimate goal is for you to highlight your music. It's just a roundabout way of doing what I'm going to tell you to do to actually generate fans. So far we've established 3 things. 1, playlists are the most common way people are listening to music on Spotify. 2, those listeners are very passive listeners. And 3, creating a playlist that has other artists on it is pretty much the same thing, and you might as well just try to get on an editorial playlist. So what should you do? Well, a few months ago, I saw that Spotify created a playlist called This is FKAjazz. It was a playlist of 48 of my songs that Spotify put together into a playlist that people could follow. Apparently, Spotify will create a playlist of This is whoever the artist is if you have 50 songs or more. Aside from thinking that, wow, okay, this is pretty cool, I also noticed that there were 57 people that were following that playlist, even though I didn't even know it existed up until then. Then I saw a video from my guy John at Hyped It, who said, you need to create your own This Is playlist. I'll link that video below because he goes into way more detail than I'll get into here. But in a nutshell, he said making your own This Is playlist is way better than just using the This Is playlist from Spotify for 2 reasons. 1, you can control the playlist if you create the playlist. The This Is Spotify playlist, you can't control the songs that go in, the songs that go out, how many songs, or the order. So having your own This Is playlist is actually really great. Now, the ultimate benefit of anybody listening to your This Is playlist is that they're there to listen to your music. Therefore, you're really pinpointing people who really actually like your music. And it's likely that the people who listen to your playlist won't just be listening to one song, but the whole playlist, which has maybe 40 to 50 of your songs on them. And the cool thing about that is the more people that listen to more of your music actually triggers what's called a popularity score. The popularity score, as it rises, starts to trigger things like algorithmic playlists like radio, Discover Weekly, all things like that. And the more you're on those type of playlists, the more you're able to be discovered by new people. It's a super dope approach. Now, I'm only in the process of doing this, but I wanted to put this out there now because I want to be able to revisit this later with all of you guys and show you the results. So far, I've done this for a month and it's been great. Identifying people who actually like your music, who like your style, whether it's a popular style or a niche style like mine, is really important, and it's a great way to garner actual fans of your music. Don't just rely on editorial playlists. Editorial playlists, they're great, but they're not really generating the type of fan base that's going to be diehard and listen to everything that you put out month after month. Like I said before, I created my This Is FKAjazz playlist about a month ago. It started at 0. Now it's at 340 something followers and counting. Maybe in a month, it'll be at 1K. By the end of the year, maybe it'll be at 10K. Who knows? But what I do know is that all of the people that are following my playlist, they're following my playlist because they like my music. And that's what you should be doing for yourself. I hope this video was inspiring, encouraging, and also helps you in your journey in your music career. Let's make this a conversation. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this. And also, give me a like. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. I really appreciate it. It helps me out so much. Thank you always. Peace.